Demonbane. This sword was forged as an instrument of revenge by a swordsmith whose family was slain by demons. It sucks in the souls of its victims to grow stronger and stronger. The skilled swordsmith was commanded by the king to make a sword to behead demons. But as he struggled to craft the famous weapon, demons appeared at his home. The demons, in a rage that such a sword was being made and determined none should ever wield it, slaughtered the swordsmith's family and left them alive to weep over their bloody remains. Burning with revenge, the swordsmith left the corpses where they lay and crafted the demon slayer. But the madman who gripped the weapon was little more than a demon himself. Flamberge. A sword whose name can also mean fire. The rippled blade deepens wounds and makes them fatal. This was a common sword in days past. In ancient times, a warrior and a dragon fought a battle. Seeing his sword melt in the dragon fire, the warrior tore out the dragon's tongue and wrapped it around his weapon's blade. The enraged dragon blasted a mighty fireball at the warrior. So great was the conflagration that both warrior and dragon were reduced to ash. All that remained was the sword, untouched by the flames. Since then, the sword has held a special magic against the flames of dragons. But it is said that should an unworthy man try to wield it, he will be engulfed in a column of fire. Greed's reward. There was once a great merchant who sailed all the 7 seas, discovering new lands and trading around the world. This merchant amassed fortune beyond all compare. One day, the merchant heard of an enchanted weapon known to some as the Dark Summoner. It was said that this sword was hidden in the ocean to the south, a land swallowed in ages past. The merchant set out, resolved to find the rare and valuable sword. After many adventures and much hardship, he found it at last. The sword was impaled in the mouth of a demon's statue. Suddenly, bolts of hellfire flew from the sword, and the merchant's ship sank into the watery abyss. Weeks later, his corpse was washed up upon the shore, the scimitar clutched reproachfully in his hand. Guardian Sorrow. This sword once belonged to the gods of a holy sage. Though made simply and without ornament, the sword's blade never breaks nor bends, no matter how often it is swung in battle. 14 boys and girls protected the holy sage, all of them orphans abandoned by their parents. They lived together with their master as a family. One day, the party was set on by a gang of brigands. The guards fought a desperate battle, rising again from the most grievous wounds to guard the path to the sage's carriage. At last, not one bandit nor guard was left alive. The weeping sage took the sword his guard had held and blessed it, so that it might protect others as his guards had protected him. Hymir's Finger. This is the largest sword in the world, too heavy for any mere mortal to lift. It is believed that till now, no warrior has been able to wield it. It was ordered forged by the warlord Va the Pitiless. Made from the melted armor of his vanquished enemies, the sword announced Var's might and grandeur to the world. The sword grew heavier and heavier each time it took a life, and it gradually became more and more difficult to wield. At last, even its mighty owner could no longer swing it. One morning, Va the Pitiless was found dead. Beside him dripping with flesh and dyed scarlet with blood, lay the sword. Who had managed to raise the mighty weapon against him? Injustice. A sword wielded as a symbol of justice by the successive heroes of a kingdom. The church of the land imbued it with powerful magic so that any who fought for justice would be blessed. The first hero was a great general who smashed an invading army. He killed a score of enemy by his own hand. The second hero was a great general who defended his country from a mutinous rebellion. He captured each and every one of the mutineers and, by his own hand, carried out their sentence of death. The last hero was a general who invaded and colonized a foreign land. In this conquered country, he ordered the massacre of tens of thousands of innocent lives. Moonfire. This sword is forged of granite that burns red with eternal heat. Only those who enjoy the protection of the moon god, ruler of the cool night, may dare grasp the handle. Legend tells of a great warrior who carried this sword into battle. Roaring a battle cry, he charged into the fray, where 100 enemy archers struck him through with 1,000 arrows. Yet not a drop of blood flowed from his wounds, and though arrows pierced his heart, his strength failed him not. His army was the victor on that day. With the battle won, the warrior returned to camp. But in the instant he laid down his sword, he froze as cold and as still as ice. The protection of the moon god had finally claimed his life. Nobuyoshi. In a faraway eastern land, there was a poet who made a living reciting songs. But he keenly felt the limits of his own skills, and so he made a pact with a ghost. With the power of the ghost inside him, he began to compose glorious and beautiful songs. His fame spread through the city, and before long, he was named the official poet to the imperial court. But one day, the ghost returned to him, and she said thus: "Your life as a genius poet is over. You shall henceforth never sing a song again." It was as the ghost said. The poet fell silent, and no more songs came from his lips. His dream gone, he plunged this sword into his breast. It still gleams with the glistening of his blood. Skald's Song. There were two sisters who were renowned as the greatest swordsmiths in the kingdom. No matter who challenged them, none could make a finer sword. One day, a wandering bard visited their home. He sang with a voice so beautiful that the gods wept to hear it, and both sisters fell deeply in love with the kind and gallant Skald. Each of them set about making the most magnificent sword so that they might win his love. But their bitter rivalry led them to make only dull and brittle blades. Seeing their discord, the Skald offered to take both of them as his brides. With their rivalry ended, together the sisters crafted this magnificent sword and named it Skald's Song. Slaughterism. This sword belonged to a demented painter who murdered innocents every night and collected their blood. With this grisly harvest, he painted masterpieces, the likes of which the world had never seen. The painter had a dream. He dreamt that one day he would create paintings so powerful that all who viewed them would be at peace. Each day, he painted feverishly, chasing his dream. But none cared for his work, and he began to feel the cold, uncaring stares of others. Eventually, the soul of the sensitive artist was broken. Red, crimson, Scarlet. In a frenzy, the artist embarked on a rampage of murder and creation. It did not end until he turned the sword on himself and forged his last masterpiece. Soldier's Sword. A sword forged using secret techniques known only to one family. The family's secret was jealously guarded, and no stranger was allowed to learn it. Hoping to discover how the sword was made, a soldier from an enemy kingdom joined the family. His plan was to steal the secret and return it to his own country. But the young soldier fell in love with the family's daughter, and he could not bear to be part from her. He confessed his plot and begged her to flee with him back to his country. But when the daughter heard his scheme, she murdered the soldier and then took her own life. And so was the secret of the sword kept within the family. Takamasa. When I first met him, I found it hard to imagine that this irascible, smelly monk that stood before me was once the vassal of such a mighty lord. Yet the gleaming sword that he held at his side suggested his tale might be true. What under heaven had happened to bring such knight so low? He told me that he had grown tired of the feuds of the noble families, but it is a hard thing for any warrior to abandon the discipline of the way of the sword.
At that time, things might have gone better,
he said, looking thoughtfully into the sky. I suppose that now, in some place, he is coming near to the end of his path. Writheheart. In the twisted, misshapen blade of the sword lies an evil curse. Within it is the hate of the woman who used it to slay herself, and the lover who betrayed her. All who take up this sword are bewitched, and against their own will they find they must slaughter others without mercy. Only by cutting their own arm can the curse be lifted. When a victim cuts off his arm, his soul becomes a part of the blade. He is able to wield it with nothing but the power of his own thoughts. Only one other way exists to break the curse of the sword. If the spirit of the girl were to fall in love with the wielder, then she would lift the spell. But no man has yet won her love. Caim's Sword. A gift to Caim from his beloved father. Since he was a young child, Caim had idolized his gentle father and longed to fight strongly and bravely in battle beside him. But the dark shadow of the empire fell over their peaceful kingdom. The empire grew stronger and stronger, until one day Caim's castle was attacked by imperial black dragons.
Caim, take Fury Eye and flee,
so ordered Caim's father. But even before Caim was able to answer, his parents were slain before his very eyes. Clutching the sword that was a gift from his father, Caim swore upon it revenge for the loss of his kingdom and the murder of his parents. Even now, an unquenchable rage still fills his heart.